Hi, everybody. So just to introduce everyone, welcome to the webinar. Today, our this whole session is actually about the impact of impact assessments, sorry. And I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Mashal, and I'm the Partnerships Manager at Green Story. Welcome to our webinar series. So this series is meant to highlight the importance and the future and success stories of measuring your product's impact from seed to shelf. If you have any questions during the session, please type them out in the question box or chat box over on the right-hand side, and we'll get to them after the discussion. And if you want to share anything on social media, please feel free to tag us at Green Story. So just a little bit about Green Story. Our vision is to enable every consumer to ask, what's my impact before they make a purchase? As a company, we work with brands from startups to global giants to measure the impact of their supply chains, visualize it for customers, and offset unavoidable emissions. I'd like to thank this amazing panel for joining us today. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator. Derek Sabori is our moderator today, and his career and personal lives revolve around sustainability. After 24 years in the action sports lifestyle industry and 2 degrees from UCI, Derek helps brands, individuals, and students embark on their own journey to balance their responsibility to people, the planet, and profits. Over to you, Derek.
Thank you, Mashal. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Really excited. We've got a really great panel today. We've got some great speakers and women here that have done some amazing things in sustainability, in business. So I want to introduce the panel here, and then we'll dive into some of the questions that we've got. And in the meanwhile, for you, the audience too, if you've got questions, put them in the chat over there. We'll keep an eye on them. We'll be saving most of the Q&A for the end of the session, and hopefully we'll get across or answer some of your questions as we go along, but we'll keep an eye over there. But first, I want to introduce Suzanne Siemens. Suzanne is a former CPA and corporate controller, so she knows a thing or two about the numbers. She's the founder of LunaPads, which is now called Isle. It's a Vancouver-based company that specializes in sustainable period care products. Isle has been honored as a top 10% Best for the World B Corporation for 4 consecutive years for their social and environmental leadership and world-class collection of sustainable menstrual products. Welcome, Suzanne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then we have Marin Chilcott. Marin, whose background is in garment and fabric technology, is the Sustainability and Technical Manager at BAM Clothing, a UK-based clothing maker who's been on a journey to create a viable and environmentally sustainable business since 2006, and one that became climate positive in 2020 and expects to be climate or impact positive across their 6 key pillars of impact by 2030. So Marin, welcome from the UK.
Thank you.
And then we also have Cindy Jones-Nyland. Cindy is the Chief Marketing Officer of an organization called To The Market. It's a turnkey solution for ethical manufacturing and sourcing of apparel, accessories, and home goods. To The Market connects brands, corporations, and retailers to ethically made products from around the world, including the US. And Cindy herself brings more than 20 years of professional experience in both public and private organizations, serving time as CMO and EVP of Marketing and Resource Development for Heifer International. And she serves today as, as a CMO to an early stage media company and helped set the foundation for their growth and their certified B Corp status. So we have some B Corp alumni here. So really great to have you all. My first question is really for any of you is making the commitment to LCA. I want to know, and I think we'll all be excited to hear, but what was your tipping point? When and why did you decide to do an LCA? What drove you to make that decision? Suzanne, maybe I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I think 2 things happened for us. One is it's just gotten really competitive in our sector, and we make period care products, and the whole femtech industry has really exploded. And so we really saw doing an LCA as an opportunity to really differentiate ourselves from our competition and empower the customers with some information that they could use to feel good about their choice. And the other thing is we happened to luckily receive a grant, and the grant was designed to support entrepreneurs who want to raise capital for their company and grow. And we felt that doing the LCA was a great way to attract investors who really care about impact-based companies like ours. And I will say happily that, that actually did work, that we have been raising capital and been successful, and the ability to show that we are committed to climate measurement had really made a positive difference.
I love that. Impacting the ESG metrics. So really great. Cindy, how about you? What was your journey? What was the tipping point for you?
I think, in general, our business model is built on building a supplier network that's better for people, better for planet. And so in connecting these overlooked suppliers to global opportunities, the questions we knew we had to answer early on were related to capturing social impact. And so the environmental impact data capture was a natural extension for our overall business model. Our clients ask for both. And so having the ability to measure at all of the environmental inputs was really important for differentiation, but also for, our overall value proposition.
Yeah, it's so important. And Maren, maybe to you as well, but I'll add on for this to your question. What was your tipping point? Why was it important? But also, what concerns did you have going into it when you guys did make that decision?
Yeah, I think, an LCA seemed like something we had to do. I mean, a clothing business is so complex, our supply chains are so complex, our impacts are so complex, and similarly to what Suzanne said, we felt like we needed to do something that was going to set us apart from all the other clothing businesses. Everyone is talking about sustainability now, so what are we going to do to stand out? This has been in our DNA and at the core of our business right from the start, but we needed to go further. And we started out with a really simplified LCA, and that kind of gave us our 6 key pillars and gave us our impact positive ambition. And we realized in setting ourselves those goals, we realized we really needed to get more accurate data if we were going to be able to measure our progress against those goals. And so that was what brought us to Green Story, was getting that accurate data and getting a better way of measuring our impact so that we could properly report on our goals and know whether we're working towards those. So what was the other part of your question?
What concern you have? But I actually want to stop you there, because that's a great point, though. I do want to make sure, maybe for the audience too, anybody want to take a stab at, how would we define an LCA? What are we trying to achieve with it? What is it? Let's define it real quick for the audience. Does anybody want to take over on that one for me?
I think Maren would be the most qualified, being the textile geek that she is, which I truly admire.
Thank you. I mean, so an LCA for us was basically looking at every single stage of producing our products. So right from the raw material through the fiber production, yarn production, fabric production, garment production, all the way to shipping the garments. And obviously an LCA can include the use and the disposal of the garments as well. So it's taking the whole life cycle of that garment and everything that goes into it. And this is just for textiles, but I'm sure it works similarly to in other product areas. But looking at that whole life cycle and measuring against various different impacts. So you can look at carbon, water, chemical impacts. So you can look at a variety of different impacts, measuring those basically.
Yeah, and understanding really the environmental impacts throughout the entire supply chain, like you said, from cradle to grave. And the way I look at it too, it gives us this nice sort of matrix, right? We've got our tiers going across the top, if you will, and then all of your environmental impact indicators going down the axis here, and then giving us quantifiable metrics and data that we can use to compare them. Certain materials that you're using, how that might compare to another, but give us sort of a science-based approach as opposed to just sort of knowing intuitively maybe that something is better or should be more sustainable. Well, let's look at the numbers and see how the LCA data stacks up so that we can really have something quantitatively appropriate for us to use in our decision making. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's going back to what your question about our concerns. That was what was so important for us. Is we've always used bamboo as a raw material right from the beginning, and we knew that bamboo, in theory, was this great sustainable raw material. But to actually know whether it was the right thing, and to measure the impacts of the processes that happen later on in the life cycle was so important for us to know that we were on the right track and that bamboo was the right material for us to be using. And so to actually have data and some science behind that has been so helpful for us.
Yeah, to have a decision-making tool. Cindy or Suzanne, any concerns that you had going into it? Any hesitation or worry about what you might find? Cindy, I'll throw it to you maybe.
Okay. One of the things I think that we found early on is because of the breadth of the products that we offer, we had to start in one place. So we started it with our cut and sew manufacturing products and those SKUs. So I think for us, scaling then beyond that is now where we're at in terms of how we look at additional products that come from our suppliers. So for us, I think one of the biggest concerns is just scaling that across every supplier and what we offer. But Green Story was really helpful in terms of isolating where to start. And that was really helpful. So, to focus on cut and sew and the core of our product offerings was really helpful.
Got it. Suzanne, how about you?
Yeah, for our part, I think we were maybe the same way that Maren was. Like, we were kind of bracing ourselves saying, like, what if the results aren't as good as we hoped? And so that was kind of the fear going in. But we did learn, like, certain components were not as climate impactful as others. And so it really kind of taught us to rethink about where we want to focus our priorities and where we can make more positive differences. And the initial fear was like, what if the results aren't good? Like, what if our intuition and our understanding of what we've learned along the way is not truly factual and scientifically proven?
Well, and I think that's why this is so important. One of the things that I always talk about with clients and students is this idea that we just really don't know. We don't have the answers until we look at it through, I call it life cycle thinking, and sort of thinking like an LCA and really trying to assess the environmental and social impacts outside of an LCA across the value chain. I want to take a minute because Amalia just joined us. Amalia, are you there with us?
I think so. I think
yeah, we hear you. I'll do a quick introduction. I'll do a quick introduction of Amalia as well, one of our last panelists. Amalia is the designer for and the founder of Vitamin A, a maker of bikinis and bodysuits sustainably made here in California. That's where I'm based right now, and of plant-based and recycled fabrics, combining feminine design with sustainable innovation. Vitamin A, who believe that style and substance can coexist, is a 1% for the Planet member and gives it back a portion of proceeds to environmental organizations who work to protect our oceans. So Amalia, welcome to the stage. Glad to have you. Glad we got you worked out and on here.
Thank you. Hopefully the camera will show up at some point.
Well, even if it doesn't, we're just kind of going through, and maybe if you're ready, I'll just get a sense of maybe what was the decision, the tipping point to get you guys to decide to do an LCA. And, what did you learn from it? What were some of the findings that really might have surprised you or that reinforced what you already knew?
Well, I think my answer echoes some of what I heard from Maren and Suzanne, and that when I started Vitamin A, that was just one of, part of our DNA really was just my commitment to the environment, but that was on a personal level. And it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years later when we got a little bit bigger where we were able to produce our own fabrics. So initially I was just, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of filling a void for myself of what was missing in the market. And the sustainability factor wasn't a part of it, but was just part of my own core value system. And so at first I was just buying, stock fabrics and making a beautiful product that I felt proud of. I was always committed to making it domestically. And, that I only learned, much later what a huge impact that has on the sustainability aspect of any product. But as far as the supply chain and the LCA, it was about, I guess, a few years into it where I said, I had done a project for Yvonne Chouinard at Patagonia.
Did we lose her?
I think so.
Cindy and Maren, we've got a couple questions that I think pertain, but did you, including third-party, does it take into account third-party vendors when you did your LCA? And also, how do you get this LCA information for the suppliers or from any suppliers you might be working with? And this goes to, I guess, just the idea of traceability in your supply chains and knowing how far you can go back. Maybe talk to us about that, about the process of what hurdles you might have encountered with your suppliers, any third-party players. Maren, can I start with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we wouldn't have been able to do this LCA if we hadn't done the work in the first place to trace back through our supply chain. And with our bamboo viscose, which is the largest portion of our fiber usage, we've managed to trace back right to the raw material. And that work took 2 years. That was hard to do, and it took a lot of just hassling people basically for 2 years. But we wouldn't have been able to do the LCA like we did if we hadn't done that work in the first place. And I mean, getting the information from suppliers is easy enough if you have a good relationship with your suppliers, but it gets more difficult the further back in your supply chain you get, because you don't have that direct relationship with your fabric mills or with the yarn mills or fiber producers. And quite often for us, especially, you're a tiny part of their business. We're still quite a small brand, and we don't have a huge amount of sort of buying power or influence. So it's really about just convincing suppliers that they want to give you the information that you want and that it's going to be good for them in the long run. So yeah, that's been a challenge, but yeah, definitely worth doing for us. And we're just at the beginning of that journey as well. I think there's still a long way to go.
And then, at that point, you're relying on available data that maybe Green Story was able to provide or help out with. Is that right? When you can't get data from your exact suppliers, is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that is the beauty of Green Stories, is that they have access to the kind of data that we would never be able to get access to, or it would take us years. So that's been so helpful in creating this much more accurate LCA than we had before. I'm really excited about in the future is how we can get it even more accurate and start using exact data from suppliers. That I feel like is the future of LCA, but we're still not at that stage yet, because there's still so much work to do for brands to understand their supply chains and be in contact with those tiers further back.
Yeah.
To start getting data from them. So.
You mentioned so much work, and Suzanne, maybe to you, how much work was it? How much time and effort did this take? And what would you advise maybe to people that are getting ready to get into this? How did you had to have your house in order? It took Maren 2 years to get everything in order, but maybe tell us about your experience of resources.
Yeah, similarly, I mean, we were on an ongoing journey of really getting clearer with our suppliers about their supply chain, and being a B corporation kind of forces you to be in order to begin with. And the other thing we did is we planned for it, where we actually hired a co-op student, a summer student, to help with the process, so that we weren't bogged down by like the specific details. So my advice is collect the data as much as you can, and have great relationships with your suppliers, like Maren mentioned, and explain to them why you're doing it and why it's supporting them and will help both your organizations grow. And then resource it so that you have the ability to kind of get it done quickly. I would say the process in total took us about 3 months. But at the beginning of the 3-month phase, we had a lot of data to begin with, and then we had this summer co-op student kind of implement it and shepherd it along the way.
Got it. And Cindy, maybe for you, and then Amalia, I'll come to you, but I think this is really good to give people a sense of what it actually takes, how long it takes, and what the experience is working with suppliers in your supply chain too. Maybe give us your insights on what it was like for you guys.
So I would echo Maren and Suzanne's comments, especially the amount of time it takes, and sometimes you even feel like you have to ask 10, 15, 20 times. And, I think for us, having relationships and building our business with relationships and supplier relationships as the actual, at the center of what we do has been important. We included gathering some of this information now into our vetting process, so that we try and explain it on the front end. And, we still, across all of our suppliers, the LCAs are only in place in, a small few. So, we have to continue to scale that out across, all suppliers. But the other thing that I would say is when you can actually also show the value in terms of what kind of production capacity can be, given at the supplier level when you can capture that kind of information and provide that impact quantification to our clients. Then that seems to, because it equates to business and production and bottom line, that seems to be a really strong lever in terms of helping in mutual benefit.
So obviously having good relationships with your vendors is really important and key. Did you get pushback on anything? Was there any sort of hesitation on giving you data, or sort of saying, well, or
So
was everybody cooperative?
Yeah, no, well, we get lots of questions, and I think that's driven by lots of things, right? It takes time, right, at the supplier level. I mean, it takes time, which also takes away from productivity and other things depending on how you position it, and just the unknown. And I think that's why and to Maren and Suzanne's points as well, having relationships that are built on trust and are important at the supplier level is game changing when you're trying to actually learn the impact from seed to shelf or factory to front door. Those are those relationships are going to be pivotal to all of that.
Suzanne, anything to add in there?
No, I think it just reinforced the relationship, and that it's a partnership, I think, is what was useful in that regard. And it hopefully just improves the relationship because they know how committed you are, and they will want to be equally committed as well.
And so on that note, I'm interested to kind of know if they were already, if suppliers were already feeling like, oh, we're exposed to this, other partners are already asking for this information. And also, what information were you trying to measure, or what environmental impacts were you looking to measure for ISLE and your company? I think we talked about waste reduction, greenhouse gas emissions, energy use. Is that right?
Energy use, how their wastewater treatment. I mean, we already have a supply chain code of conduct, so a lot of those questions were answered, but we might have needed to window down, at a little more granular level. So it wasn't anything terribly new because we'd already asked a lot of those questions. I don't know, Maren, maybe you might have more specific examples.
I mean, we're only just getting to the stage now of asking the suppliers for that really detailed information of exact energy use and exact water usage. So at the moment, our LCA is based on the data sets that the Green Story had available. So really the information, it was more about providing them information about the exact locations of supply chains, so that they were able to use their data sets to get to use the relevant data for that location. So yeah, and we focused on water use, carbon emissions, and land farmed without pesticides. Those were the ones we focused on because our initial LCAs were comparing bamboo viscose and organic cotton to conventional cotton, and we knew basically that those were the three key areas of impact that we were going to see the best results from in our LCAs. That's what we started with initially.
And the ask of suppliers, Susan just asked in the comments. I mean, one, also Kaylin asked if or Megan, I'm sorry, if you would do an LCA on all your products, and I would assume the answer is no. Ideally, yes, but you're going to probably pick a few key items, key materials, and zero in and use that as a baseline, and then go from there. Is that fair to say? And then, and then the answers, or I'm getting, what would suppliers expect from you? What type of questions were you needing from them? Was it on, invoices for energy, electricity, water usage? What kind of questions would a supplier expect? Susan asking the question, she's a supplier. Cindy, do you have any idea of questions that they might specifically get?
Fabric, location, weights, a lot of the inputs that Green Story asked. And I'm thinking through even asking some of our suppliers the questions that we did. In many cases, they had access to, it wasn't information that was hard to get, it was time consuming to get.
Yeah. But I think you said, or somebody said, I mean, once you start building it into your operations, then it becomes a little bit easier, right? Would you say, And Amalia, I think we have you back. So maybe if you've been listening in,
I have.
I'll throw this one over to you. But how did measuring the impacts, doing this LCA, how did it change your business process or the way that you're doing business? Is it changed in the decision-making process or the operations of how you guys do things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what you guys heard from the first time I got cut off, but really I kind of started this journey many years ago when I was a consultant for Patagonia. And even though I didn't work for them, I was put through their same training processes that the rest of their in-house design team was. So I really, got this crash course in sustainable practices. And when I learned about how Yvon created his first microfleece fabric from recycled bottles by pushing his suppliers and forcing his suppliers, I was, really inspired. And it took me a few years before Vitamin A was big enough to have any leverage whatsoever over our suppliers. But, eventually I would think, I guess we'd say Vitamin A is a big fish in a very small pond called the swimwear industry. And so I did start that way by, trying to just ask my suppliers to provide this type of fabric. And they all told me that there wasn't anything available on the market. And the reason was because there was no market for sustainable products or sustainable swimwear. And I was like, but I'm the market. And so, eventually they said, well, if you want to invest in this 100% on your side, we'll be glad to partner with you. And so I did partner with a few mills and went through that initial process and learned a lot. And I am getting to your LCA question through this, sorry, but learned a lot about the processes and about what the post-consumer piece and the pre-consumer pieces of the raw materials supply chain. And anyway, long story short, when I did finally launch something to market, and my retailers also said, well, these are beautiful designs, we're going to buy them, but we really don't care, and we think that it should be a couple bucks less if it could be, because we don't care that they're made from recycled fibers or this or that. And why don't we care? Because there's no market. Again, they were telling me there's no market for sustainable swimwear, it's just very ironic now, because since Vitamin A was able to finally push enough suppliers to work with us, and it really became our driving force and motivating force. The whole industry is now sustainable. There isn't a brand who's not chasing or trying to greenwash if they're not already, and there isn't a new brand who doesn't start out with that core value. But anyway, for the longest time, to answer your question, Derek, we were trying to measure our impact by ourselves and communicate this to our customers. So it was super important to me not to, well, this is before we were direct to consumer, so not to a lot of my retailers. They were the ones saying, we really don't care. You make a beautiful product, that's all we care about. It fits well, it looks great, makes people feel good, but we don't care about that other side issue of yours, which is actually kind of the driving force of everything I do without even, knowing it at the time. But so we were trying to create, honestly, we didn't even know what it is an LCA or anything technical like that. We were just trying to create this conversation and explain to our audience and our customers what was important and why this is important. And so that was very difficult. We were constantly going directly to all of our suppliers, asking them from the mills, the fabric mills, to the dye houses, to the raw material suppliers, asking them to help us quantify this stuff. So when we found out about Green Story, the big reason was we really wanted to tell this story. We were happy that we were doing it, but we just wanted, we wanted to quantify for ourselves to understand, if, as some of the other participants said, if we were having the impact we thought we were having, and where was, the bigger opportunity for more impact in our supply chain, and where was it where we thought maybe we were and we weren't having as much. So, we were really happy to to learn and discover, that our recycled nylon products were actually more impactful than we even knew that we thought. And the fact that we make most of our product domestically was also very, very helpful because obviously, reduced emissions by far.
Sure.
Having to fly things. But the one thing that surprised me, and is having a big impact now on my team who wants to kill me, is that we discovered that there is still one area where we make some of our product in India, some of our linen product. And I always thought, linen is such an incredibly sustainable fiber for so many reasons. It doesn't use pesticides and it's so hardy and so many reasons. And so I thought that was good enough. And I thought that was accomplishing our goals. And it was only when LCAs were completed and we did, the final analysis that we realized that because even though, yes, the flax is grown very sustainably in France, the raw material, but because of it was, being aired to India and then being produced in India. And it was explained to me by the Green Story team that it's really because India's grid is just so inefficient. It brought down our ultimate ratings where we, so now when I say my team wants to tell me, I'm really pushing them to bring that very last bit. I mean, probably over 5% of our products are made domestically located in California. We're trying to, after learning that the big why, it's very clear and it helps us make that decision. Okay, we have to start just producing it here.
Yeah. So, that's what's great about this, about getting this data. Maren, maybe over to you. What decisions, how has this changed maybe the way that you guys look at things? Thanks for sharing that, Amalia. How has it changed the way you guys behave, or any decisions in your supply chain based on the new data that you have?
I think, the biggest thing it kind of confirmed for us, or all of the LCA work we've done is to help us to focus our resources and our budget on where we're having the most impact, because I think there could be quite a lot of red herrings, like shipping from China, for example, is actually, although there's an impact there, just changing the raw material that you're using, or changing the fiber that you're using, or producing it using renewable energy actually has a much bigger impact on your carbon footprint, for example. And I think that things can get warped quite easily when you're talking about impact, and that impact of shipping from China can seem much bigger than it really is. So it's actually helped us to focus. We know that they're helping our suppliers to move to renewable energy, and that choosing better fibers and better raw materials are two of the best things that we can do to reduce our impact, our indirect impact. So, and then at the other end of the scale, we've got customer use as well, and including that into our LCA, we understood. I mean, our 2020 footprint is something like 59% in manufacture, 26% is by the customer, and the rest is kind of BAM and our direct impacts coming from BAM. So there's a huge portion there that the customer is just from washing the clothes that's coming from the customer. So now as a business, we're tackling that in our marketing. We've got campaigns going about washing clothes for longer before you wash them, and wearing clothes longer before you wash them. And yeah, it's kind of trying to influence our supply chain and our customers is just as important for us as dealing with our own direct impacts. I think that's probably been the biggest shift for us.
Yeah, and we'll get there to the consumer engagement part. I think that's really important. Suzanne, any decisions, any changes in supply chains, or any new decisions based on data that you found?
Well, just not what in terms of what Maren and Amalia have already said. What I can add to it is that what the LCA revealed to us that was surprising was just the consumer impact of washing. Because we, in particular, it's not just apparel, it's reusable for a specific purpose for your period. And so because you're washing it several times and you want it to last 2 years, 5 years, how you dry it had a really significant impact on the LCA measurement. And so it changed our marketing to really strongly encourage folks, hang dry your laundry so that the carbon footprint impact is minimized. And so that was a significant change for us too, because we like consumers to be able to say, our products are easy to care for. Throw them in the washer, throw them in the dryer, they'll be safe. But we've changed it to say, hang it because it has a better climate impact and we can actually measure that. So that was really useful.
I love that. Cindy, how about you? Any changes in approaches or changes in supply chain?
One of the things I think that we found is on the reverse side, by getting the information and knowing more about products and the metrics, when we have retailers or brands ask for, like they're trying to meet certain CSR or ESG requirements with their procurement budgets for, certain products or merchandise, we can kind of reverse engineer that into, now that we have data to support certain SKUs or certain of our products, we can match that more easily, given that we have, and we can match it easily. One of the things Amalia said is, being able to actually stand behind the data that you think that you've been putting out. And so, we by having knowledge about some of our products, we have a lot more trust and faith in what we're presenting from an idea perspective to some of our retailers that are interested in, sustainability, environmentally, ethically made products that they can extend on their shelves.
I love that. And I think that brings up a really good, important topic, whether it's retailers that you're working with or your customers. Maybe Amalia, how are you guys putting this out into the market, or what's your plan to? And, has it changed your consumers' perception of your brand if you've already had a chance to put out this LCA data, specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, we've been posting a lot of our LCA data on our social channels and also on our website. It's very evident, right on the homepage, but also when you check out, as you know, it tells you, what your savings are. But socially, we've just gotten tremendous feedback that, our customers care. They want to hear this kind of conversation from us, and it makes them choose vitamin A over another swim brand, which might also look good, but there's so much more to our brand, and our customers are really clearly stating and identifying that that's a factor in their decisions and their loyalty to us. So, yeah, it's a really nice, it's a two-way street, and we're having this ongoing conversation and, trying to mix our aesthetic sensibility and our aesthetic appeal with all these stats, and learning that our customers love it. They don't find it dry or boring or tangential. It's actually a core part of their decision-making process.
Right. Maren, on your side, do you think that consumers, are they ready for this, this specific data? Are they asking for this from you guys, or is this sort of an added bonus that you're providing to them?
I don't know if that many customers are asking specifically for data at the moment. And I think there's a little bit of a disconnect with lots of customers not necessarily knowing what, for example, what a ton of kilograms of CO2 equivalent means, which is why Green Story is really helpful to have the equivalences that you can toggle between actuals and equivalences, so customers can kind of get an idea of what that number actually means to them. It's a kind of relatable number. But I think what it does give them, even they might not realize that they want that number, but it gives credibility, and that's what customers are searching for. There's so many customers that just, like, there's so much noise out there, and they don't know. They don't know what's real and what's authentic and what's greenwashing. So I think it really helps to just give your brand that. And I think that's what our customers really love about it. And then I think just, something we're trying to do at the moment is we understand we don't want to add to any confusion that might already be out there. And so we're looking at adding in to what we have all of our impacts on our product page. We're looking at adding in some more like-for-like comparisons. So at the moment, for example, we're comparing to conventional cotton, but actually we're an activewear brand, and we have activewear leggings, and those products might actually be better compared with polyester leggings, which is what's more out there on the market. So that's the kind of next stage that we're trying to do is add in more like-for-like comparisons that, again, is just more like that makes more sense in a customer's head, comparing a legging with a conventional polyester legging. So sure. That's kind of what we're doing.
Got it. Suzanne, how about you? Thank you. Suzanne, how about you with your customers? Customer-facing interaction, storytelling, how are they interacting with you? How much do they appreciate it?
They definitely do appreciate it, and I think that's why they do come to our brand. And I think, just in particular hearing Amelia talk about it, I mean, we as brands are all doing something quite trailblazing by setting the bar higher. And what we're doing is by providing the data, we're educating our customers so that they can constantly do better. And I guess I will add that this LCA has also helped us have that additional credibility with the media so that we can pitch to the media. This is an important story about how brands who care about sustainability and want to share that with their customers is an example to show what other companies should be doing. So I think the credibility part is great because it helps with your customer and their loyalty, but also with elevating the conversation because we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're really doing it for that higher purpose.
Definitely. Cindy, how about you? Former marketing executive, what's your angle on how this helps in storytelling, differentiating your brand, and and battling greenwashing as well?
I think the one thing, making the information accessible is really important. So I think, Maren, you said, the data for data's sake, I think is helpful. We're pushing the limits on, expecting more from brands and retailers, but being able to take that data the way Green Story does and make it accessible for storytelling so that consumers who are craving this type of information, right? I mean, we're constantly seeing that the consumers want more transparency, want to better understand who made their products, how they were made, all the different environmental inputs that went into them. One of the things we do whenever we deliver orders and POs to our retailers is, and apologies for the noise in the back, we actually include an impact report. And so that is a summary of the inputs from Green Story and how we add that into the information. And then we also work with our suppliers on 2 or 3 standard social impact data points. And so a lot of times we hand that over to the brand or retailer, and then they're able to extend that to their consumers, but also to their employees, because a lot of times they're using this as a way to even push agendas internally towards a better practices and better buying practices for their consumers.
Yeah, interesting. So many different opportunities with this LCA data and going through the whole exercise. Well, in the last part here, I want to open it up to the audience for sure for any additional questions that you might have. But are there questions from the audience that we need to address? While we're waiting for those, Cindy, I think you brought it up, and I think it is good to point out. And LCA doesn't address social impacts. So was that a consideration, or right now is it focused on the environmental side? How does that play in, if it does at all? Anybody? Suzanne, maybe I'll go to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cindy and I were both B corporations, right? So social impact is another important pillar, and we know that the LCA is not going to cover everything. But even as part of our supplier code of conduct, we're asking about how they're paying their employees, and are they paying fair wages? Are they giving them breaks? And so it goes deeper than just what the LCA covers, and you can kind of cover it as part of the whole package. And so that to me is one part. And a lot of our companies on this call, we have giving back programs, whether it's 1% for the planet or a 1-for-1 program or a partnership with an NGO, and it just fulfills the kind of bigger picture of what you're trying to do, that you're not a one-dimensional brand, that you care about multiple intersecting impact issues.
Yeah, which is what sustainability is, right? Social, environmental, economic, finding a balance between it all, incorporating governance. Michelle asked in the questions here, which is a good one, how many of the companies, have any of you on the panel, have taken their LCA data and created a carbon label directly on the packaging, like Oatly or Allbirds? Is anybody considering that specifically, relaying that specific data on your packaging?
We we have it on our product pages already, although at the moment it's kind of presented as the savings is the product comparison, so it's presented as the savings rather than the footprint of the product. although we report on the actual footprint in our annual report. And we would look at adding something to packaging. The only thing that would stop us from doing that is having to create separate packaging for every single product that we did, and that would create all sorts of problems. And so the idea, we're a digital direct-to-consumer business, so packaging, we're trying to reduce packaging as much as we possibly can. So that's something that we probably wouldn't look at doing, but there are interesting bits of technology that, Green Story are already offering, things like QR codes. And so, there's always potential for things like that in the future, adding QR codes to our care labels so customers can, go through that link and they'll see the whole supply chain of that garment. They can see the whole impact of that garment. So that's something we'll definitely be looking at in the future.
I like that. Suzanne, how about you? Any plans for consumer facing? Already it's on the e-commerce on the website, but anything direct for customers?
Well, I mean, there's only about 15% of our business is at the store shelf level, and our product is actually really small. So you have a box this big that you can only put so much data on it. So I think a QR code is an opportunity for the future, for sure. And I mean, but overall, it's the education part. I think that's the most important. And I think Allbirds is a hugely aspirational brand that I'd love to follow their suit and see what they're doing, especially at the retail level.
Agree. I've got Carrie put a great question here. What would be the first step to get started incorporating LCA data into your brand's operations, et cetera? Where to start? Cindy or Amalia? Either of you have Amalia, maybe I'll go to you. Any thoughts on that? What's the best first step for them to incorporate this data into brands' operations?
I mean, the first step is signing up with Green Story, because you guys make it simple. And then, from there, I did see, and hear the conversation about how difficult it is to get some suppliers to provide that data. And I don't have the easy answer. I think Cindy and Suzanne spoke to that, and you just have to kind of explain to them why it is ultimately in their interest. And also, hopefully the suppliers we're working with, we have some leverage over, because they really want our business. Not that we're so big or you're so big, but I think people want to do business with good partners. And so, I think it's just having a conversation like anything else, trying to find the right person to have that conversation with. But, I think that definitely signing up with Green Story is the first step. Kind of lays out the steps that we need to take as manufacturers. We just fill in the boxes. And I also think their team was fantastically helpful in guiding us through that process of building our LCAs.
I see everybody nodding their heads. Cindy, how about you? Seems like it was an relatively easy process. And is that where you would start too, or any other advice?
Yeah, one of the other things I would do, and Suzanne said this earlier, having a supplier code of conduct, or, we have production practices with guiding principles. Some of those things that you bake in early, so that when, the suppliers that you're working with and the production partners you're working with understand that there's a social purpose first at the heart of your organization, I think is a great place to start. So, everything can flow out from there from a reason perspective.
Can I also just throw in a plug for B Corporation, because they offer a B impact assessment that's free for companies that are just dipping their toe. And just going through that process will flag things that get you ready to be a more sustainable, ethical brand. And it will flag things from the supply chain perspective. It'll flag things from a social and justice and impact perspective. And so that's a really great place to start.
I love
we're also B Corp as well at the moment. It's been very helpful.
And for anybody, I love that you brought that up, because that is a roadmap too for brands and companies. If you don't know where to start, or you're thinking of bringing in a consultant, this goes against what I do, but you can use that as your consulting roadmap. That basically is your to-do list, environmentally, socially, governance-wise. So it's a really great tool. Those self-assessments are a really great tool, because you might have a low score to start out with, but at least what questions you need to say yes to eventually to have a really strong program. Any other bits of advice for anybody that you might have for brands embarking on this LCA journey? Of course, aside from enrolling with Green Story and using those tools, but communication-wise, supply chain-wise, choosing materials, etc. What advice do you have? Maren, can I go to you for that?
Yeah, I would just say trying to understand your supply chain. I mean, obviously every business that's creating product has a different type of supply chain. So understanding what stages you're going to need to include in your LCA. Some people decide to include it all the way to the customer and the disposal phase, and some people don't like to include it to that. So understanding what stages you want to include, and then understanding, who the people are that are involved in those stages. I think that is absolutely key.
Sarah, could I give you a quick answer to it? This is just my experience, as I said, was what really opened my eyes to the industry of sustainability was my time at Patagonia. And although I'm not there anymore, but they are obviously the founders and the cornerstone of the concept, right, of responsible business practices and certainly of sustainability through innovation. And I still go to their website. I mean, I got so much education from them directly as being a consultant, but I go to their website all the time. I mean, you could spend your life there. It just, you can go down different rabbit holes, and there's just so much information. You want to learn the difference between conventional cotton and organic cotton, and go there. Of course you can find it. You can do your research in lots of places, but it's just a kind of a quick reference place where their information is vetted, and at least you can feel secure in knowing that it's true, and then obviously take what you learn there and go deeper as you want. But I think it's just kind of an easy place to point somebody who's really at ground zero and saying, where do I even begin?
Yeah, great point. Look to the leaders and have a look at what they're doing. Cindy, how about you? Any last few bits of advice for anybody who's looking to jump into this?
Well, I'm reminded of what Amalia said earlier, and this probably applies to all of us, but staying true to the DNA and purpose of your organization, even when you're being told sustainability isn't important, and remaining strong in terms of that commitment. I think that's an important, and that's what the LCA and what this information reinforces, and just staying true to the DNA of what your organization stands for.
Yeah, good, nice one. Suzanne, how about you?
I would echo that, and just noticing one last comment from Aika, and just to respond to that, it really the LCA taught us to look at different components of our supply chain. And so we learned, for example, that because our products are quite small, the actual fabric component was not as significant as actually looking at how the product is made and the energy that's consumed in the production of it. So it kind of allows you to kind of reorient where you want to put your attention. And I think Maren has talked about that as well. But I echo Cindy wholeheartedly that it really comes from like your why, and that will drive whether or not you do the LCA now or maybe you do it later. And if you stay true to focusing on that, then you're already on the right path.
We've got a which could be a tough one. Let's see if anybody wants to tackle it. Peter brought up, it seems like there are many tools that are good for producing reports based on secondary data sets. But if you're looking to collect and report on primary data specific for carbon, energy, as well as water, wastewater, eutrophication, waste, and other impacts, what tools would be a better fit? Does anybody know of any, or have plans to use anything beyond Green Story's LCA?
I think I'm hoping that's where Green Story are going next, because I don't think there are that many tools that work in the same way as Green Story that are using exact supply data. There's programs like the HIG index, and they have like the facility module. I don't know what it's called, FEM module or something, and that's where people can get specific information from their suppliers. But I'm not sure if that, we haven't looked into that much, so I'm not sure if that can be used for an LCA, but potentially that's a way of getting exact data from suppliers. But I think, what you're looking at, Peter, is exactly what we want to look at, and I don't think there are that many tools out there that are there yet.
I would say maybe one thing that sort of flattens out the conversation on that one is that especially in the apparel industry, essentially we're all kind of using the same same materials, same fibers, right? Cotton, polyester, some nylon, some spandex, elastane, and some viscose or tree-based fibers. So essentially, the data is there. It's a matter of tapping into it and maybe getting tweaks on where it's coming from, how it's sourced, and how it's grown and how it's processed, et cetera. Amalia, I guess for you as we start to wrap up here, what plans do you guys have going forward in terms of more LCAs, more data, more messaging? What's the go forward plan for you guys?
All of the above, yes. Like I said, our customer, we're happy. We do just little short Insta surveys and just kind of ask them straightforward. Are you interested in hearing this kind of information from us or that kind of information from us? And we are just really excited that we keep getting the resounding. We want to know your sexy stats. That's what we're excited about that. And so, yeah, we just plan to keep going deeper. And there is another app. I cannot think of the name, but our friends over at Boyish Jeans, they use it, and it goes another step in the impact assessment. And I don't remember what the tool is named because we just kind of discovered it and started speaking with our friends over there, like, hey, we want to go that next level. So yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a better answer, but we just plan to keep going as far as we can with understanding our supply chain, improving our supply chain, bringing back that last little 5% of our business, domestic and local, and then we've also struggled with, because another step is, well, how do we get this onto the actual product? And so I just thank all of you guys for that idea for the QR code, because that's the trade-off, right? We don't want to put another piece of paper on there or in their package. And so much of our product also is sold direct to consumer or online through other websites. So there's not, that kind of packaging that happens at a store level. Yeah, I think that's another approach that we are looking at is, how do we just educate further and deeper for the people that want to go there, and they don't want to really just come to our website and browse. But I love the QR code idea.
Well, thank you, everybody. Michelle is here to probably take us away. So I want to thank all the panelists, Cindy, Maren, Suzanne, Amalia. Thank you for being here, and thanks for joining me in a conversation. Michelle, you want to take us away from here?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists today for sharing their stories. It's such an interesting experience to hear how all of you kind of went deep into your supply chains and what that means. And thank you to all the people who attended for taking their time to listen to these stories. Keep a lookout on Green Story and our social media for our summary blog, as well as a replay link if there's any bits and pieces of this conversation you'd like to revisit or take another look at. But thank you all for your time and for being here. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.